Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are continuing with the Lost series and we are going to be talking about the very tragic character of John Locke. So there's a lot to get into with Locke and I'm excited to get into it today. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Katie. I'm a qualified therapist. I've been in private practice now for about 4 years. All the information about me is down below. But yeah, I'm excited to talk from a therapeutic perspective today about John Locke. If you're new here, please check out my other Lost videos. I've already spoken about Jack, Kate and Sawyer, which has been very fun. And yeah, I'm excited to continue this series, but please subscribe to my channel for other types of videos as well. I do educational videos, I do TV reactions, I do vlogs, all kinds of different stuff. So please subscribe to my channel and please follow me on Instagram as well for information about accessing therapy and more information about how to improve your mental health and more information about my services. So I think that's everything in terms of the intro. I'm going to keep it succinct for once in my life. Just to be clear, there is going to be spoilers ahead of this video. I don't think in any of the other three I gave an official spoiler warning. I kind of just assumed because the TV show is like over 20 years old and we're talking about an entire character arc, that it would be a given that there would be spoilers, but I'm realizing that that might not be the case when people click on the video. So, oops, but yeah, definitely spoilers ahead. There's also going to be timestamps down below though for particular segments, particular topics around Locke's character. So if you are just interested in a particular theme or a particular moment from the show, you'll hopefully find it down below. Apologies if I sound a bit nasally. We're getting to that time of year. I'm not like fully sick, but I think I'm maybe a little bit sick. So yeah, apologies if my voice is a little bit irritating. There's not much I can do about it. So to start off with, I want to talk about how I think Locke would present as a client. So the idea is Locke is in therapy or is starting therapy. What would be my initial first impressions of Locke? Obviously, this is just completely hypothetical and just a bit of fun. With the other characters that I've spoken about so far, I've had a very clear answer for this question, like in terms of avoidance, in terms of not wanting, particularly Kate and Sawyer, in terms of them not wanting to open up at all, probably at the start, not wanting to give me their true self. Locke is a bit of a question mark. I think it would depend on our dynamic, our relationship. I think it would depend on where he was at in life, if he felt like he needed support. He is by nature a very independent person, kind of beats to his own drum. So I don't know if having somebody to support him would suit him particularly well. So I'm not sure how open he would be. Obviously, let me know down in the comments what you think about the idea of Locke in therapy. To be honest, I'm optimistic. I think he would be forthcoming if he felt like he was going to get something out of it, a bit like Jack. And obviously, as we know, Jack and Locke are quite similar in lots of ways, like personality-wise, just not in their beliefs. Yeah, I would be optimistic about Locke entering therapy. I also think my initial first impression would be the amount of pain that he's in. With certain clients that come in to see me, there's the people that you kind of know instantly, you don't make any assumptions, but you kind of know instantly that there's going to be a lot here. There's perhaps a lot of trauma, a lot of pain that the person's carrying, a lot of things that have built up over a long space of time, like over a complete lifespan. And I think Locke would be a character like that, where I would feel instantly his suffering and be cautious of that and sensitive to that, and would take it at a gentle pace, obviously, because there would be a lot to get into. So they're my kind of initial thoughts, impressions about Locke in a therapy setting. Another thing that happens in therapy, obviously, is that a character, a person, tells their story. So what would I expect Locke to talk about? What is Locke's story? So let's start with childhood. It seems like an obvious place to start. And of course, Locke was put up for adoption. He was given up by his birth parents. And we know that he was also fostered. We don't know how many different foster families he was in, or if he was in a home. We don't know like the details of that. But obviously with that comes a lot of trauma, potentially. I think in Locke's case, yes, that sense of being rejected by his birth parents, not really knowing why, a lack of answers, and then a lack of a secure base then, a secure attachment, particularly if he went from a care home to foster parents. You lack that sense of stability and also family and that sense of security as well, and not really feeling like you belong. So this is not a good start for Locke. He's not starting off in life on the right foot in terms of his sense of self and his confidence, and his need for validation basically begins here. We also find out in season 1 that his foster sister died. So again, that's more trauma, that's loss at a very early age. We don't know the details of that relationship or anything, but to me, that is quite a dark thing to happen to a child, to be part of this foster family and have your foster sister die by a tragic accident and in quite a horrible, shocking way. Again, just building that picture of what Locke has already gone through at a young age. And it clearly has stayed with him as well, because he tells the story in season 1 as an adult. So, you know, it's not a distant memory that he's suppressed. It's very much in his consciousness. We also see him as a child get visited by Alpert, and this is the beginning of Locke's sense that he is special. It doesn't really go to plan. Richard Alpert is, you know, giving him items and he has to pick the right ones, and he picks the wrong one, or he doesn't pick like the perfect combination of objects, and then Richard essentially rejects him. So that's really confusing for Locke at such a young age. But there is this message around him being special, and that's kind of the start of that, around being chosen for something, being chosen for a bigger picture, a bigger destiny, a bigger purpose. So that's the very early signs of that for Locke. And then another thing to mention in terms of childhood is he gets bullied at school. We see that as like a child teenager. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because it's trauma upon trauma. So we've got adoption and what that can bring for a lot of people, and being fostered, and we've got being bullied at school. So again, and this is before stuff has even happened as an adult yet. I've got a sister dying as well. So a lot happens in a short space of years, and that's before he's even grown up. So let's get to adult Locke then and what happens there. So unfortunately, it seems like Locke doesn't do particularly well career-wise, considering he's very smart at school. So there's something interesting there about what happened. And it's not to say, I know it's not as black and white as you're a smart kid, you end up getting this high-flying job. But I do think there's something here where it represents his environment or his support system or his opportunities, because he is really smart, and then he ends up, we see him in different jobs over the years that don't utilize his skill sets. And so it's just a curiosity for me there around, is that his lack of confidence? Is that his lack of opportunity? You know, perhaps he didn't do well at school in the end, even though he's smart, so he doesn't have certain qualifications. So there's just a bit of a question mark there that I noticed. Then Locke's birth mum comes to visit him, and this ends up being a whole mess of emotions, a mess of an experience. But essentially she says that he is really special. So this is where it is really reinforced. This is really when Locke starts to change around his sense of self, because his own birth mum, who put him up for adoption, who he obviously wants to feel love from, to feel validation from, is really giving that to him, is really saying, you are really special. So that is something that Locke holds on to with a tight grip. But then tragically and infuriatingly, through his mum, he meets his dad. And that is, you know, the beginning of this horrible traumatic relationship where he meets his dad, there's bonding. Again, there's validation, there's being made to feel loved, there's being made to feel important, there's being made to feel special, there's a connection there, but it's all fake. And essentially Locke gets used for his kidney. And it's horrendous, really, because why, and I think Locke asked this question at some point, like, why didn't he just ask him for it? Why did it have to be a con? Why did it have to be a trick? Why did he then just drop Locke like he was nothing? As Locke says, like he was a piece of trash. So it's really traumatic. It's incredibly painful. It's like the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate rejection. And I can't imagine that feeling of being used like that, like being taken in, buttered up, given everything that I've always wanted from my birth parent, and then dropped after taking something so vital. You know, it's not money, it's not anything like that, it's literally an organ. Really horrific. And what happens is Locke can't let it go then. It's so traumatic, it's so unbearably painful that Locke has a hard time reconciling with that and processing that and letting it go, understandably. Like, it is fully understandable why he can't let it go, because there's no closure, there's no answers, he just wants to know why, and his dad's incapable of giving that for him. Something that's quite frustrating though is that Locke meets Helen, and of course Helen is like a bright light for Locke. She really likes him, he really likes her, they fall in love. It's a glimpse of happiness in Locke's life that he's not really had up until this point. Like, there's, you know, the dead-end jobs, the lack of friends, he seems quite socially isolated, probably lack of romantic partners, family rejection, not having a family. So he's very lonely. And I think, you know, it's so nice to see him in those early stages with Helen. But again, tragically, it doesn't end well, because his dad sucks him back in again, and he can't let it go. He lies to Helen about letting it go, but then he can't really. He's just, his mind and his heart is too tangled up in the trauma and in the pain. And there's so much unanswered for him. And he's basically a child. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean that in like, when a child is desperate to be loved, they do everything. They follow you around the house. They are constantly looking to you for something. And that's what Locke's doing as a grown man. He's standing outside his dad's house. He is doing research. He can't just move forward with his life and let it go. And that's where he's really similar to Jack, as we spoke about in the Jack video, so I don't want to harp on that. But he finds it incredibly hard to let go. He holds on to things with a tight grip as well, particularly when they're painful. And Locke's really similar to that. So they have that in common, which is probably why, you know, there's lots of reasons that they clash, but that's definitely one as well. The relationship with Helen doesn't work out, and it doesn't work out due to this mixture of like self-loathing and self-sabotage that we've seen in the other characters that I've already spoken about. But also something about Locke is that he's really easily manipulated. I will talk about this when I talk about island stuff, but it's true. He's quite gullible. I don't know if gullible is the right word actually, but he really almost like is naive. That's a better word. He's naive and sees the good in people, or really wants to see the good, and it's based on his need for love and validation from people. And because of that, he's desperate to see things a certain way. Whereas like Helen, for example, is being realistic about the situation and is just all about moving forward. So it's this combination of maybe self-sabotage and self-loathing. Maybe he doesn't think he deserves Helen. But I also think he's just easily swung in a certain direction, which is hard to watch. It's really hard to watch that episode. And of course, just when you think things can't get any worse, he gets wrapped up in his dad again, and this results in him getting pushed out of a window and paralysed. So, I mean, you can't, like, it's not funny, so I don't know why I'm laughing. I think I'm laughing because it's just so shocking. But yeah, you can't get more tragic and horrendous and traumatic and just shocking that his own dad would do that to him. He's obviously, it's attempted murder. He obviously doesn't die, but then he's even more permanently damaged physically as well as mentally at the hands of his dad. So it's just, it's so sad. It's so sad, so painful. And then, of course, right before the plane crash, we see him in his wheelchair, again, in a dead-end job, in a job that isn't satisfying. He's getting picked on by his colleagues. He's lonely. He's calling like certain hotlines to talk to women because he's so isolated. He is holding on to a bit of a dream around his bigger purpose, his, you know, using his skills, being special, what he's meant to do. But of course, he wants to do this through a walkabout in Australia, and he gets rejected from that because he can't do it. And of course, that births the famous line, "Don't tell me what I can't do." And there's a lot of anger in that voice when he shouts that. There's a lot of pent-up anger that he takes out on the wrong people. You know, he's got so much anger towards his parents, he's got so much anger probably towards himself with the choices that he's made. And, you know, you see it come out sometimes. He proper lashes out, and that's a really good example where he's so frustrated, he's so angry, he's so full of rage, and he knows that he's meant to do this, or he's designed to do something like this that he feels really passionate about and that he has the skills for, and then he gets rejected again. And we know that Locke doesn't do well with rejection. And that's where we sort of end with the off the island stuff before the plane crash, where it all changes. So before the plane crashes, we know that he's yearning for something more, something that he feels like he is destined to become. And there is a sense of entitlement with that, this sense of being special. The reason I'm noting that is because when the plane crashes and his legs suddenly work, that feeling is validated, which kind of sets off a particular path in motion for Locke, because it completely confirms then I am special. I was right. This is my destiny. This is who I'm supposed to be. It is the validation that he's needed all along. He is chosen. And on top of that, we see him get to actually utilize his skills. So we've seen him in these dead-end jobs where he's not being sort of valued and his skills aren't being used. Here, he's the hunter, he's the gatherer, he is a survival expert, he is a bit of a leader. Obviously, Jack in season 1 is really the main leader, but Locke is certainly a bit of a leader as well in terms of, you know, gathering supplies and searching the area and giving advice to people as well. We see him give advice to Charlie and Jack and all kinds of characters. So he is really in his element, and his confidence boost. You know, if we compare season 1 Locke on the island to his flashbacks, it's kind of crazy the difference in terms of his demeanor. He's like quietly confident. Everything he says has meaning. He's constantly smiling, and of course people find it a bit creepy, a bit disturbing, but it's because he's just like, this is it for me. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life. So there's like a quiet confidence / arrogance. Arrogance is a bit of a strong word, but he really is feeling good about himself at this point. So another way he is similar to Jack, and why I keep using words like arrogance and stuff, is because this sense of self that has got this gigantic boost, being so validated, that feeling of being chosen, that feeling of being special, ends up blinding him. He is totally blinded by his belief that the island is special, that it's not really an island, that there's a lot more to it, that they're meant to be there, etc. And in the same way as I spoke about in the Jack video, that Jack is blinded by his determination to get rescued and to go home, and he's got tunnel vision with that he doesn't hear or see anything else. Locke is exactly the same, but just in the opposite direction. He is blinded by this sense of, we need to be here, we're supposed to be here, we are special, I'm special, listen to me, I'm right, my decisions are right. And he actually ends up making some really poor decisions. So the first big example of that is Boone. Now, it is an accident, but he has some responsibility around Boone's death by sending him up there, and he sees a vision of Boone covered in blood, so he definitely should have known better, especially if he believes in signs and things like that. But he sends Boone up this plane because his legs aren't working, and of course Boone, it tragically falls, he gets crushed, and Locke drops him off and then runs back to the hatch, because at this point they discovered the hatch, which again is all part of this big plan and has meaning and is special, and he was the one that was meant to find it, etc. Meanwhile, Boone is dying and Jack doesn't know the causes of his injuries. So there's a selfishness there, and it is his first major error. But he even says in regards to Boone that like everything happens for a reason, and that Boone was the sacrifice that the island demanded. And this is where he starts to lose people, because this is someone who's died, and to believe, it doesn't matter whether he's right or wrong, I'm just talking about his character arc around his connections with others. And this is when people start to really pull away from Locke, and he becomes a little bit more socially isolated. And people like Jack start to have a real issue with him because he's so in his beliefs. He almost writes off Boone's death as like, it's a sacrifice. He has to mold everything that happens to his belief system. But he does question his faith after Boone dies, because we see him banging on the hatch door and the light comes out. It's obviously a very iconic moment where he's like, I've done everything you wanted me to do, so why did you do this to me? And again, there's that anger, there's that rage, there's the like, why did you do this to me? As in like, I don't deserve this. I've been doing all the right things. I've been making, even though no one's asked him to do certain things. So, but he's talking to the island, like, why are you doing this to me? Without realizing that he is a piece of what's happening. He is not the full picture. But of course, when the light goes on, he sees that as more validation that he is right and that he is on the right path. The hatch ends up being a massive test of his faith, actually, when he starts to believe that it is a, experiment, and he says something along the lines of, every second of my pathetic little life is as useless as that button. And that line really breaks my heart, because it's that pain, isn't it? It's that like huge pain of like, his life has had no meaning. It's been pathetic, it's been lonely, it's been useless, the same as this button that we're having to push. So it's not to say that his faith is stable the entire time, because it absolutely isn't. Mr. Echo plays a big role in bringing him back, as does Desmond, but he definitely goes on a journey where he starts to question his meaning in all of this and is really angry about that as well. Season 2 is where he meets Ben as well, and Ben sees right through Locke. Ben sees such an opportunity with Locke, where he is so easily manipulated. He is vulnerable in his beliefs, in his need to feel special, and Ben really uses that against him. He has Locke in a way wrapped around his little finger. So season 2 is the beginning of that. Obviously we see that literally the entire rest of the show, but in the same way that Locke's dad was able to manipulate Locke so easily and quickly, Ben has the exact same dynamic with him. And of course, in season 3, as part of this manipulation, Ben brings Locke's dad on the island, which is crazy. It's a bit of a gag. And he can't kill him. He can't move forward as like the leader. Richard Alpert says that to him, that you need to let go of this. This is holding you back on what you're meant to be, what your journey is. But Locke can't do it, even with all this faith, even in all this like, I'm here for a reason, this is my destiny, I'm a leader, I'm this, I'm that. Even with all of that, the one piece of the puzzle that is missing for him is that love from a parent, and there's still part of him that wants that, so he can't kill his dad. And of course then he tricks Sawyer into doing it instead, and then he's finally able to move forward. But it's just interesting to me that not that I condone killing your parents to get through something at all, but to me there's something really interesting there around not being able to face him properly, not being able to properly confront him either. He just ties him up, locks him away, and gets Sawyer to do all the confrontation and eventual murder. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I spoke about this in my Sawyer video. I'm not sure that being roped into doing something so violent is a particularly healing thing. So maybe Locke not being the one to confront him and not being the one to do it could actually be a positive thing in Locke's journey. So obviously let me know what you think about that. Needless to say, Locke is being manipulated, and Locke thinks he is the sort of front man of destiny when it comes to the island. But what we obviously know throughout the course of the show is that this has been going on for years. Like, Richard Alpert has been there for a really long time. We meet the man in black, Jacob. And there's also the games between Ben and Widmore, and Locke is a pawn in all of this. He just gets used, he gets manipulated, he gets roped in, he gets dropped. He doesn't see it, which is really frustrating. And I can see why, because he's gaining what he's always wanted, but he is being used as a pawn a lot of the time in a lot of his story. He makes poor decision after poor decision, like killing Naomi to stop them from leaving the island. Like, that's not going to get people on side. People then start to just write him off even more as being crazy. And this is where I really want to highlight the difference between Locke and Rose. Rose is somebody that kind of comes up and has a lot of scenes with Locke, which I think is really interesting. And Rose has a completely different path because of probably what, you know, she's not had the rejection in her life that Locke has. She's probably not been as lonely in her life as Locke has, so she doesn't need to feel special. But technically she is. She has cancer, and when she lands on the island, she is also healed, and it's amazing, but she kind of keeps it to herself. She tells her husband that's about it, and she has faith. Hers is more of like a religious faith, but she certainly has that. But she doesn't then demand things. She doesn't then think, we're meant to be here, we're going to stop other people from leaving, we're going to dictate how things should be. They actually, her and her husband, end up just doing their own thing. So I really wanted to highlight the difference there and what the problem is with Locke and what kind of sets him up to fail in a lot of ways. So the rest of the island stuff, he becomes a leader. He's kind of the opposite to Jack, they're opposing sides basically. So he becomes a leader of the people that want to stay. Jack becomes a leader of the people that want to leave. And this is really like when they are at war, essentially. But long story short, you know, some people get off the island, Locke and a group of people stay, but things start to go horribly wrong. There's flashes happening, things, you know, the island is taking a turn for the worst. And of course, then as the responsible person on the island, he wants to make it right. And I don't mean he's responsible for what's literally happening. I just mean he has got that leadership, he's got that knowledge of the island, he's got that connection. So he feels like it's his duty to leave the island and bring everyone back. But he's kind of the wrong person to send to convince everyone, unfortunately, because by this point, there is such a lack of trust in Locke. There is such a lack of understanding of him. He is misunderstood. He's killed people in front of people. He doesn't explain himself particularly well. And, you know, he's up against people that have built lives off the island. So it's a bit of a hard, I feel sorry for him because it's a hard thing to try and convince the Oceanic Six to come back. So this is where I want to give a trigger warning because I will be talking about suicide. So it's going really badly, him trying to convince the Oceanic Six. He is essentially rejected by all of them, and it's really painful to watch each one happen. Jack even says, which is like a stab in the heart, Jack even says, have you ever stopped to think that you're not special? That you're just an old, lonely man who crashed on an island? And that is gutting, because there is an element of truth in that. They're both, the thing with Jack and Locke is they're both right and they're both wrong. That's why it's such an interesting dynamic, because Jack has a point in the sense of, who are you to be telling us what we're meant to be doing, what we should be doing? What gives you the right to do that? So I understand that, but I also completely understand that from Locke's point of view, he's right. Like, the island's falling apart. They probably shouldn't have left. Jack was way too laser focused on leaving. He didn't consider other things. They left people behind. People are dying. It's, you know, flashing to different timelines. It's a whole big mess. And Locke does have every right to feel special, considering he was healed by that place. And so he's got every right to see the place as special as well. But they're both like really stubborn. They're both really adamant, and neither one of them are flexible in their belief systems at all. So that's why it's like bumping heads constantly. But that's a really painful thing to hear Jack say. And we're seeing Locke slowly break, and it's really, really sad. He's written off by everybody as just this crazy person. So he's completely alone. I think he starts to question it as well. I think Jack's words really cut deep. So his faith is really going. He just feels like he doesn't know what he's doing. He feels like a complete failure as well at this point. And of course, that's what leads him to attempt to end his own life. And of course, Ben, because he's Ben, and we'll have a video on Ben, I'm sure, kills him. So rather than letting him, die his own way, he saves his life and then murders him anyway. So really frustrating to watch. And it's really sad as well because Locke's final thoughts are, I don't understand. Like the whole thing is really confusing to him. Like, why save me? And then now you're, hurting me and killing me. And that is the end of Locke's story. So when I said tragic before, it's tragic. And it gets worse because even in death, he is used. He's been used by so many people, used by his dad, used by his mum for money, used by people on the island, Ben, Widmore. And then in death, the man in black uses his body. So he's continuing to be used, which just makes me feel really, really sad. But it is really symbolic of how the island became his undoing in a way, his passion about the island being so special, so special, so special. We need to all be here, and sabotaging people's rescue attempts and things like that. The island was his undoing. It betrayed him in lots of ways because the man in black is obviously, which is the smoke monster that he saw and said was really beautiful, is now manipulating and using his body as a vessel to do that. So it is really symbolic of how it all kind of went wrong and how it all kind of went downhill. So I want to talk about the flash sideways then. So Locke in the flash sideways seems to be in a bit more of an accepting place compared to the flashbacks anyway. So not particularly happy in his life, but he is with Helen, which is really nice. He is in a wheelchair and seems to be, quite accepting of that fact. And funnily, he seems quite cynical as well, and he doesn't really believe in miracles, and it's very it is what it is attitude, which is obviously very, very different to the Locke we know. So it's interesting that in death and in purgatory, this is what he's become. Things do start to go wrong where he, is fired from his job and things like that. And he's sort of a bit stuck. He sort of doesn't know what to do. And he meets Jack. Of all people, he meets Jack. So perfect. He was a spinal surgeon. And of course, Helen is the one to point out to him, this is not a coincidence. This is a miracle. This is meant to be. So I think it's really nice actually that in death, she's the one that's sparking back his faith, because Helen really was one of the highlights of his whole life. And then of course in the last episode, this is where I will get emotional. If you've watched these videos, you'll know that when I talk about the last episode and getting the flashes, that it just get a lump in my throat. And it had to be Jack, didn't it, that gave him the memories. Of course, Jack performs the surgery. He has the feeling in his legs back. He's it worked. He's really happy. And then he gets the flashes and remembers his life. I find it really, really interesting and deliberate that his flashes are primarily from season 1, because I've spoke about a lot in this video how it all kind of goes wrong for Locke and he starts to make poor decisions. But a lot of those flashes are early season 1, which is when he first arrived, when his legs got healed, when he felt amazing, when he felt I'm healed, I'm meant to be here. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. I'm fulfilling my destiny. You see him helping Walt and teaching him how to hunt, and him finally using his skills and being the man that he's supposed to be, and being confident in that and being respected in that by the people on the island. And I think that is the highlights, apart from with Helen, that is the main few days, few weeks highlights of his entire life. And that's why we see that in his flashes. And that kind of concludes Locke's story then. So we see him go into the church, we see him forgive Ben, we see him walk, we see him get up out of his chair and walk into the church and greet everybody. And there's something about, obviously the last episode is very much about the characters finding peace. I really feel that the most with Locke. I feel there is such a sense of, I forgive you, Ben. not needing the chair, walking into the church, shaking Jack's hand, like, pretty emotional. Like, there really is a sense of peace, which, you know, finally, after such a traumatic life. So what are the key themes then? What are key themes that I would expect to come up in Locke's therapy sessions? Definitely trauma, definitely rejection from people, pain, suffering, definitely being used by people, especially by the people that are supposed to love you. And there's a lot of use of that word supposed. I'm supposed to be here, they're supposed to do this, they're supposed to, that word I think would be a key word that would come up a lot in the sessions as well. The need for validation, the need for people to believe him, the need for a following and people to respect his belief systems. And obviously the themes of faith and miracles and destiny, and maybe taking that too far and, you know, having balance with that. And I think loneliness would be a theme as well. I think through therapy, it can be really healing for people who are lonely because it's someone non-judgmental to talk to. And I feel like Locke, in different times of his life, would have really benefited from that because he was so socially isolated in the flashbacks as an adult, on the island, off the island, obviously. He was so lonely, and I think that would be something that couldn't be ignored. So what are Locke's key relationships in the show then? Who would I expect to come up in the therapy sessions? Obviously, I won't go into detail with every single one because we've spoken a lot about certain people today, but certainly his parents, maybe any foster parents that he had a difficult relationship with, the sister who tragically died, obviously Helen as well and what happened there, maybe colleagues, maybe his boss. I think Boone would come up because I do think that was such a turning point for Locke, which was Boone's death. And so I don't know whether there would be grief there or just talking through what happened, maybe being really honest about what happened and facing it. There was something where he kind of brushed Boone's death under the carpet. It's just a sacrifice the island demanded. There wasn't a lot of processing that happened. So I think that would definitely need exploring more. I think Jack would obviously be a really significant relationship. I think there's a reason, as I said, that Jack was the person to bring Locke's flashes to life at the end. I think Jack represents a lot of what Locke hates. He also is competitive with Jack. He also is like brotherly towards Jack in a way, or like fatherly towards Jack in a weird way, especially in season 1 when he's giving advice. There's just a lot there. There's a lot there where he really wants Jack to respect him. He's desperate actually for Jack to listen to him, to respect him, to follow him. And of course, Jack doesn't, so it ends up being a whole thing, as we've seen play out in the show. So definitely Jack. I also think other characters like Mr. Echo and Desmond would come up because they are part of his faith journey. So Mr. Echo obviously is the one that has the faith in the end, whilst Locke doesn't. Desmond as well is the person in the hatch, and of course Locke has this whole relationship with the hatch and is technically having a relationship, a connection with Desmond. The light going on, which was so significant for Locke, was actually Desmond before Desmond was about to end his own life. So a really big part of his belief in destiny and having humans to represent that is really important. So I think those two would come up. I think people like Charlie and Walt would come up, which is people that he had connections with that he ended up losing, essentially. Particularly Charlie. You know, Charlie ended up absolutely hating Locke, which is really sad because Locke is actually the one that got Charlie through his addiction in season 1. But again, there's something where that represents, like, it's complicated, and obviously Charlie goes through his whole journey. But there's something there that for me represents what decision making, what's changed, how come you were really close to these people and helping them and now they hate you? What's gone wrong here? Not to put all the blame on Locke, but it would just need exploring what's happened there. So how would I help Locke? You know, what would be my kind of focus in the therapy sessions in terms of supporting him? Obviously, as I've mentioned, he's a very lonely man. So just being there and being someone for him to connect with and talk to would be probably the primary focus. But I would also challenge his decisions for sure, in a way that was obviously very soft and gentle, and not telling him what to do myself. I wouldn't dream, especially with Locke, because, you know, don't tell me what I can't do. I would never enforce anything. It would be very gently challenging. I would just be questioning the power that the island has over his choices. This is what I do with a lot of clients when they're like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to make this choice, and I realize there's an entity that's kind of influencing that decision. It's just a questioning that. It's like, is this your decision? Is this really what you want to do? Or is this external factors or external people that are dictating this choice? The island has so much power over Locke and his choices that he makes, that I would just gently question that and challenge that to try and get him to see different perspectives. I would obviously do a lot of validation. This is something that Locke has lacked his entire life. So I would validate his beliefs. I would, you know, when I say about gently questioning, I wouldn't like mock him or question too much. That would be so insensitive. I think everyone's entitled to their faith and their beliefs, and if they believe in destiny and miracles, like, that is absolutely fine. It's just when it's influencing you so much that I would question it. But in terms of having those beliefs, that wouldn't be questioned at all. That would be validated by me. That would be encouraged if it gives him that sense of self, that happiness, that feeling of worth, because his self-worth has been so badly damaged. So definitely a lot of validating what he's saying to me, definitely a lot of listening. He wants to be listened to so badly. So I'd give him a lot of that. I would explore the word special with him, like, what does that actually mean to him? Because that word comes up so much. Like, what did it mean for his mum to say that to him? What was his earliest memories of feeling special? Why is it important to him? Just exploring it together to kind of break it down and to see if there's ways to maintain that feeling of being special without being like reckless with it or hurting other people, of course. So definitely an exploration of that word and reinforcing it as well, and exploring what he wants out of life and how to find it. So obviously when he gets what he wants on the island and he's healed and everything, he's like, tight grip, this is me, this is like what I have to. But in life, there are so many different ways to maintain a certain feeling or to get something out of life. I think we can really restrict ourselves of like, this is it for me, this is my destiny, this is like where I'm supposed to be, full stop. And so again, it would just be talking about who he wants to be. What kind of man does he want to be? What does his life look like? Does he want a partner? Does he want a certain job? What hobbies? Does he want social connection? Just making sure that other areas of his life aren't neglected just because he's so focused on fulfilling his destiny. And the final question that I usually answer in these videos is, how does Locke change then over the course of the show? What are like some major changes? And really tragically, we don't get to see that with Locke. Locke is taken away from us as a character prematurely, and we don't really get to see what could have happened with his character arc. We don't get to see that final product because he dies. But as I said before, what we do see is in the last episode, and it is a lighter Locke, like the weight has been lifted off his shoulders, the way he's able to forgive Ben with ease, the way he gets out of his wheelchair. He feels really free to me, and just, he's not carrying his suffering anymore. He's not so restricted by it, and is clearly let go of a lot of stuff, whether it's with his dad. There's mention of his dad in the Flash Sideways, actually, reconciling with Helen, meeting Jack again. There's just so much where he's let go and he's at peace, and you really feel that. I think that's, as I said, that scene when he's walking into the church, there's a calmness about it. And I feel like he feels special in his own way. He feels special for his role in this grand picture of everything. In the Flash Sideways, it's all the pieces coming together, and he's really grateful for his piece. He's really grateful for Jack showing him his piece of the puzzle, but he accepts that it is just a piece. He's not the main event. There's no ego anymore with the journey, the story of all the characters. It's just him, his story, his piece of the entire picture of what happened, and he's okay with that. And so that is actually a really significant change, despite us not getting to see a lot of this happen alive. And maybe on some level he knows the impact that he's had on others. Like, for example, in his death, that's what sparks the change in Jack. That's what inevitably does lead Jack to want to go back to the island. And I'm sure there's other things as well, but I do think there's a sense at the end of him accepting his role and the good that he did, and the fact that he was special and he did play a part, and it was all supposed to happen a certain way, and he kind of is accepting that, even though his part of it was actually really sad in the end. So yeah, it's a tragic one, but I think that is everything that I have to say about John Locke. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much if you got to this point. Please let me know about what you think of Locke. Is he one of your favourite characters? Is there anything that I missed talking about? Please share your thoughts. I've really enjoyed, as sad as it is, because I do find reflecting on Locke and talking about Locke quite sad, I have also really enjoyed it. He's such a fascinating character. He's kind of an essential character to the show. I don't know what the show would be without Locke. Like, you need someone to represent that faith in the magic of the island. So really, really significant and amazing actor as well. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it. If you have as well, please give me a like. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos. As I said, please follow me on Instagram as well. I post a lot of content over there around mental health and accessing therapy. Stay tuned for the next Lost video as well as other videos. And yeah, take care everyone, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.